Welcome to True Echo, where real stories echo far beyond the moment. Today's tale isn't just about a woman in charge, it's about what happens when leadership is tested, respect is forgotten, and one undercover move changes everything. You're about to witness the story of Maline Royce, the boss no one recognized, until it was too late. It was a Thursday morning that clung to the skin, humid, thick, almost accusatory. The kind of morning that didn't ease you into the day but shoved you headfirst into it. Across the street from Royce Motors, one of the most polished high-end car dealerships in all of Texas, Maline Royce sat quietly in a rental Chevy Malibu, drumming her fingers on the cracked plastic steering wheel. She didn't look like the powerhouse she was. Faded jeans clung loosely to her athletic frame. A wrinkled t-shirt hung on her shoulders like it belonged to someone else entirely. Her thick brown hair, usually styled with precision, was now tugged back into a messy bun beneath a pair of knockoff sunglasses. Her expensive jewelry and iconic designer heels were absent, left behind in her mansion for one reason: today wasn't about power. It was about truth. Maline Royce was 42, battle-tested and business-savvy. From a gravel lot selling beat-up trucks in her 20s, she had built an empire with her bare hands. Now she owned 3 dealerships, sleek, immaculate, profitable. But lately something had shifted. Complaints had started trickling in, small at first, then consistent. Cold customer service. Poor sales experiences. Deals slipping away for no good reason. She heard the usual dismissals from her management team: just a bad week, nothing serious, probably just difficult clients. But Maline hadn't clawed her way up the business ladder by ignoring signs of rot. Today she wasn't the boss. Today she was a ghost. Stepping out of the Malibu, she breathed in deeply. The scent of cut grass and distant car fumes filled her lungs. Then she crossed the street, each step deliberate, her heartbeat quickening despite decades of experience. When she pushed open the glass doors to Royce Motors, a blast of air conditioning and that familiar new car smell hit her with a wave of nostalgia and unease. Inside, the showroom gleamed like a magazine spread, glossy floors reflecting the curves of Jaguars, Cadillacs, and Lincolns, each meticulously polished. But there was something hollow in the air. A lack of urgency. A lack of care. "Can I help you?" A man's voice interrupted her thoughts. Crisp blue suit, slick back hair, and a name tag that read Troy Stanford, Senior Sales Executive. He didn't stand up. Just leaned back, gave her a once-over, and let his eyes flick away, unimpressed. "I'm here to start training," Maline said casually, masking her real identity with ease. "HR sent me." Troy sighed like she'd just told him his vacation got canceled. "Another one?" he called over his shoulder. "Greg, this one's yours." From behind a glass-walled office, a balding man in his 50s emerged, face flushed with boredom. "New hire, huh?" he muttered, barely glancing at her. "Come on." Greg didn't ask her name. He didn't introduce himself. He just shuffled ahead, leading her through the labyrinth of shiny cars without a word. Around them, salespeople laughed, bantered, and talked commission splits like she didn't exist. They stopped at a desk near the back. No computer, no welcome packet, just a battered training manual slapped onto the wood like it was a doorstop. "Read this when you get a chance," Greg muttered. "We don't do hand-holding here. You learn by watching." "Got it?" "Got it," Maline replied, swallowing a deep well of irritation. "Good. Stay out of the way. If you see a customer, don't engage. Get someone else to help." And just like that, he left. Maline sat at the lonely desk, eyes scanning the floor, fists clenched tight in her lap. No one asked if she needed help. No one offered a tour or even a smile. Then it started. 3 salespeople nearby began whispering, not even bothering to lower their voices. "I give her 2 weeks," said a woman with red nails filed to razors. "She looks lost already." 2 weeks, said a man with a shiny forehead and a fake Rolex. "She probably thinks a Range Rover is a Jeep." The third, a broad-shouldered guy who clearly lifted more than he sold, chuckled, "HR sends us warm bodies. Doesn't matter if they can sell a car. Just has to breathe." Maline stared at the manual, not seeing a single word. Her blood simmered. She wasn't expecting applause or special treatment. But this culture of mockery, arrogance, and apathy, was rot. And she needed to know how deep it ran. For the rest of the day she watched. She saw Troy ignore an older couple because their shoes weren't designer. She watched Jessica, red nails, walk past a young woman who clearly needed help without even glancing her way. Greg sat in his glass office, scrolling on his phone like nothing outside his screen mattered. By 4 p.m. Maline's head throbbed. She felt the weight of betrayal, not personal but systemic. This wasn't a case of a few bad apples. The entire orchard was diseased. And then came the breaking point. She stepped into the staff break room, a cramped space with a dying coffee machine, faded posters on the wall, and the smell of microwaved burritos lingering in the air. Just as she reached for a paper cup of water, she heard it. "Did you see the new chick?" Troy's voice laughed through the walls. "She looks like she wandered in from a Goodwill rack." Greg chimed in with a snort. "No way she sells anything. Maybe we take bets, 3 days tops." Then Jessica's voice cut through, cold and gleeful. "She's not one of us. Royce Motors is premium. She looks like she belongs behind a flea market counter." And then Greg said it. "We sell dreams here. Not yard sale specials." Maline froze, cup trembling in her hand. They didn't just dismiss her. They dismissed the very dream she had bled to build. When she walked out of that break room, she wasn't invisible anymore, not to herself. She passed the cars without seeing them, the pride she used to feel in every curve and finish now soured. She stood by the showroom window, arms crossed, heart a thunderstorm in her chest. Her father's voice echoed, "When you see a problem, you crush it so it never comes back." Tomorrow she would crush it. But first, she had to watch the rot one more day just to make sure she cut it at the root. The next morning, Fort Worth woke under a pale sky, bleached by dawn and thick with humidity. Maline sat at her kitchen island, a black coffee steaming between her palms, her eyes fixed on a folded sheet of paper in front of her. It was blank for now. By the end of the day, it would hold the signatures of those worth keeping, if any. Her disguise went back on, but not without a grimace. The oversized t-shirt, the old jeans, the knockoff sunglasses, they were starting to itch in a different way now. Not physically. Spiritually. Because this time, when she walked through those glass doors, she wasn't just a silent observer. She was a fuse, slowly burning her way toward detonation. When she entered the showroom, nobody blinked. Jessica was sipping a green smoothie and filing her nails again, looking about as motivated as a house cat. Troy leaned against the hood of a Lincoln Navigator, texting with one hand and yawning with the other. Greg, predictably, was already in his office with the blinds drawn halfway, pretending to work while catching up on sports scores. Maline made her way to the desk in the back, unnoticed and unimportant, exactly how she wanted it for now. By mid-morning, the patterns repeated. Customers were ignored unless they looked like money. A young couple in second-hand clothes was left to wander for 10 full minutes before they gave up and walked out. When Maline tried to help, Troy cut her off, plastering on a smile and steering the couple out the door with a fake apology. "Stick to watching, newbie," he muttered over his shoulder. "This place eats amateurs alive." She didn't flinch. She just watched him work the next customer like a used car magician, all show, no soul. The same arrogance. The same performance. It wasn't just bad behavior. It was a broken system that had rewarded the wrong traits for too long. Later that afternoon, while the others chatted in the corner about drinks at Murphy's that evening, Maline took her chance. She slipped into Greg's office without knocking. He looked up, startled, clearly annoyed to see the trainee breaking invisible protocol. "You need something?" he asked flatly. "Actually," she said, her voice calm but loaded, "I was wondering, what do you think the boss would say if she saw how you all treat people here?" Greg chuckled. "Trust me, sweetheart, the boss hasn't stepped foot in here for over a year. She's too busy playing executive somewhere downtown." Maline leaned forward slightly. "Maybe she's closer than you think." Greg laughed. "Yeah. You know her?" There was a long beat. A dangerous silence. Maline smiled. "Oh," she said, "I know her very well." She turned and left without another word, leaving Greg squinting after her, confused. That was her final warning shot. By 5:30 p.m., the day wrapped in the usual way. Greg clapped his hands like a camp counselor, declaring it a solid effort, despite the showroom losing 2 walk-in sales. Nobody seemed to care. Nobody except her. She rose from her chair, slow and deliberate, and walked to the center of the room. And then, one sharp clap of her hands. It sliced through the showroom like a whip. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the music from the overhead speakers seemed to lower in respect. "Can I have everyone's attention for a moment?" she said, her voice cutting through the air like a polished blade. Confused glances. Jessica paused mid-scroll. Troy tilted his head, half smirking. Maline reached up, took off her sunglasses, and placed them on a desk beside her. The silence grew electric. "You probably don't know who I am," she continued. "But I know exactly who you are." Jessica blinked. Troy's smirk faded. Greg emerged from his office, visibly startled. "Wait." Maline raised a hand. He fell silent. "My name is Maline Royce," she said. "I own Royce Motors." Gasp. A few people actually stumbled back. Jessica's nail file dropped to the floor with a sharp clink. Troy's jaw unhinged. Greg's face turned from red to ghost white. "I built this company from nothing," she said. "No investors. No shortcuts. Just sweat, time, and sacrifice." She stepped forward, slowly, letting her presence fill the room like a rising tide. Nobody dared breathe. "And today I came in here dressed like someone who didn't matter. Just to see how you'd treat me when you thought I was beneath you." More gasps. A few people shifted awkwardly, looking down, cheeks flushed with shame. "What I saw broke my heart," she said. "Customers ignored. Disrespected. Judged. New staff mocked and discarded before they even had a chance to learn." Greg opened his mouth again, some half-formed apology or excuse, but she steamrolled right through it. "And you," she pointed at him, her voice dropping into steel, "were the worst of them." He flinched. "You're supposed to lead by example," she continued. "Instead, you set the standard so low it's buried under the foundation." Then she turned to Troy. "You judged people the second they walked in. You decided who deserved respect based on watches and wallets. To Jessica, you had more energy for your nails than for the customers paying your bills." The room was still. Frozen. Then Maline dropped the hammer. "As of this moment, all of you are suspended. Effective immediately." Gasps turned into murmurs. Shock melted into panic. "You're going home without a paycheck to fall back on," she said. "And if you want to come back, I'll be waiting here tomorrow morning. With new rules." "My rules." She didn't wait for questions. She walked to the front of the showroom and stood beneath the Royce Motors emblem, her voice carrying one last time. "This company isn't about wealth. It's about dignity. Respect. How you treat people matters. Because you never know who you're talking to." And with that, she left the showroom in stunned silence, every jaw slack, every ego shattered. Tomorrow the test would begin. The morning sun rose reluctantly over Fort Worth, casting a soft, hesitant light across the glass facade of Royce Motors. The building looked the same, but inside the air had changed. Gone was the lazy confidence, the empty swagger of the showroom's regular rhythm. It had been replaced with tension so thick it could be cut with a key. Maline arrived earlier than usual, not in disguise, not behind dark sunglasses, not hiding. Today she came as herself. Crisp black slacks, tailored white blouse, hair pinned back in a sleek twist. No makeup, no jewelry. Just authority. She unlocked the doors herself and stepped into the silence. For the first time in days, the cars in the showroom gleamed without guilt. They weren't symbols of arrogance anymore. They were promises. Of quality. Of possibility. And now, hopefully, of change. She laid a stack of printed papers on the center table, 10 copies. On each sheet, the same title was printed in bold letters. Code of Conduct, effective immediately. The rules were simple. Not a legal labyrinth of HR jargon, but something anyone could read, understand, and live by. 1. Treat every customer with dignity and respect, regardless of appearance or background. 2. Serve with pride. Appearances don't matter, attitude does. 3. No internal mockery, gossip, or belittlement. Period. 4. Everyone trains. Everyone improves. Everyone is accountable. 5. The job is earned every day, not given. Underneath, a final line. If you sign, you stay. If you don't, you walk. Maline stood beside the table as the clock ticked toward 8 a.m. The official start of the day. 8:03, silence. Then the door swung open. Troy. His suit looked freshly ironed for the first time in weeks. His usual swagger was absent, replaced by a somber gaze and quiet steps. He nodded at her without a word, walked up to the table and picked up a copy. He read it, slowly, carefully. Then he grabbed a pen and signed his name. Jessica came in next. No green smoothie, no phone in hand. Her red nails were unpainted now, and her hair was pulled into a neat ponytail. She looked younger, smaller. Her eyes were puffy like she hadn't slept. She read the code, then looked up at Maline. "I was wrong," she said quietly. Maline didn't respond. She didn't need to. Jessica signed. Greg arrived 10 minutes later. He stood at the edge of the room for a long time, watching the others, unsure whether to step forward or walk out the door forever. Maline didn't say a word. Eventually he walked to the table, picked up the sheet, and read every word with tight lips. His hands shook slightly. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear. He signed. Others trickled in, some confused, some nervous. Not all signed. Two employees turned right around and walked out without speaking. Maline didn't stop them. If their pride was louder than their willingness to change, they didn't belong. By 9 a.m. the room was smaller, but clearer, cleaner. A quiet circle of employees remained, all of them freshly aware of how fragile trust could be. Maline addressed them not with a raised voice or corporate fluff, but like someone who had fought too long and too hard to let her values erode in silence. "I didn't build this place for the elite," she began. "I built it for people who work hard, who dream big, and who want to feel like they matter when they walk through those doors, whether they're buying a Rolls Royce or just looking around." She paced slowly in front of the cars, the floor echoing softly beneath her heels. "I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for effort, for heart, for respect." The room nodded, some visibly moved, some embarrassed, all humbled. "And let me be clear," she added, her voice sharpening just enough to send a jolt through the group. "If you sign that paper just to keep your job, but you're not willing to live by it, you'll be gone before the month is over. Not suspended. Fired." She paused, letting the words land. No second disguises. No warnings. No speeches. Silence again. Then finally Troy stepped forward. "I was wrong," he said. "I judged people too fast. I thought looking the part was more important than being the part." Jessica followed. "I was careless," she admitted. "I laughed when I should have listened. I thought I was better than I was." Even Greg cleared his throat. "I stopped trying. Thought I'd earned the right to coast. Turns out I was dragging the whole place down." Maline nodded. Not in approval, but in acknowledgement. Change had begun. Not in fireworks. Not in grand gestures. But in quiet honesty. That afternoon, a young couple walked into the dealership. Their clothes were plain. Their shoes worn. The kind of customers who, just 2 days ago, would have been invisible. Jessica approached them with a glass of water and a genuine smile. Troy offered to answer every question without rushing them. Greg walked them through financing options with a patience he hadn't shown in years. They didn't buy that day. But they left smiling. And for Maline that was a sale of a different kind. The kind that couldn't be tracked in revenue. Only in integrity. As the showroom buzzed with a new rhythm, Maline stood by the office window, watching, listening, remembering her father's words. "When you see a problem, you crush it so it never comes back." She smiled, not with triumph, but with something quieter. Something stronger. Hope. Because sometimes the biggest wins don't come from closing deals. They come from opening eyes. The transformation wasn't instant. It never is. Rebuilding a culture is like restoring an old car. You can polish the hood, replace the rims, and buff the chrome all you want, but until you get the engine and rebuild it piece by piece, it's still just a shiny wreck. That's what Maline knew. That's what she was ready for. Monday came with a clean sky and a showroom still carrying the scent of quiet tension. The newly signed code of conduct sat pinned to the staff bulletin board, visible to all. No one dared remove it. No one dared ignore it. It had weight now. Real weight. Maline watched from her new perch, not a hidden desk in the back, but an open standing desk right near the entrance. Not as the undercover boss anymore, but as the present one. Visible. Involved. And most importantly, accountable. "I'm not going back to my private office," she told the remaining team that morning. "Not until I'm confident this place is what it's supposed to be." No one questioned her. Instead they adjusted. Greg, surprisingly, was the first to make a move. He replaced the battered training manuals with newly printed ones. Not written by HR but by himself. Practical. Clear. Rooted in the real experiences of real customers. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. And for the first time in years, Maline saw something in him that had long been buried beneath cynicism and laziness. Pride. Troy, ever the polished salesman, began to rebuild his reputation in small ways. He greeted every customer personally, even the ones who arrived in dented sedans or faded sneakers. No assumptions. No prejudgments. He didn't always get it right. But when he stumbled, he apologized. That alone was a seismic shift. Jessica took to shadowing the finance team between client meetings. She asked questions. She took notes. She even volunteered to train a new receptionist, walking her through the systems and sharing everything she wished someone had told her on day one. By midweek, the rhythm of the showroom was different. Still cautious. Still slow. But undeniably different. Customers who would have once been ghosted were now offered water, guided through the lot, followed up with, even if they didn't buy. And more importantly, the energy shifted from cold calculation to human connection. It was progress. Then came the first test. A woman named Letitia walked in just after lunch on Thursday. She was older, probably in her 70s. Wore a faded dress with a rip near the hem. Carried a canvas tote bag that looked like it had seen more decades than some of the staff. She walked slowly, carefully, hesitantly. Greg saw her first. He glanced toward Troy, who glanced toward Jessica. Everyone paused. A week ago they would have ignored her completely. Maybe even laughed about it later in the break room. Not this time. Greg stood up, walked over, and greeted her personally. "Welcome to Royce Motors," he said with a warm smile. "What brings you in today?" Letitia blinked, surprised. I'm not sure I can afford anything here. I was just passing by. Can I ask you something?" Greg said. She nodded. "Do you have 5 minutes to dream?" Letitia blinked again. Then she smiled. Greg gave her a quiet tour, not pushing, not pitching. Just showing. She sat inside a Lexus she had never imagined touching. She asked questions about hybrids. She spoke about her grandchildren. She confessed, finally, that her old car had broken down last month and that this was the first dealership where she hadn't felt ignored. Greg nodded slowly, listened more than he spoke. At the end, she thanked him with teary eyes. She didn't buy a car that day. But she left carrying something that mattered more: dignity. Maline watched the whole exchange from her desk. She didn't interrupt. She didn't even speak to Greg afterward. But later that evening she scribbled a quick note and slid it under his office door. "That's what Royce Motors means. Mr." The momentum didn't stop there. By Friday, even customers started noticing. Online reviews trickled in. Came in expecting the usual pressure. Left feeling like royalty. "Didn't end up buying a car, but I will soon. And I'll buy it here." Something's changed at Royce Motors. You can feel it. The dealership's energy had shifted from hustle to hospitality. But change, real change, demands sacrifice. That night, Maline stayed late, alone. The building was quiet. The luxury vehicles glistened under the dimmed lights like sleeping beasts. She sat at her standing desk, not working, just thinking. There was still one more thing she had to do. It wasn't enough to change behaviors. She had to rewrite the legacy. Royce Motors had been tainted, internally and externally. It wasn't about saving face. It was about starting over. She opened her laptop and began drafting a public letter. One that would go out to every customer, every newsletter subscriber, every follower on social media. A letter that began with the words, "We forgot who we were. And I take full responsibility." She didn't ask a PR firm to polish it. She didn't run it through legal filters. She wrote it from the gut, from the wounds, from the truth. By the time she hit send, it was nearly midnight. She leaned back in her chair, exhausted, satisfied, and for the first time in weeks, hopeful. Because rebuilding isn't about erasing the past. It's about owning it, learning from it, and being brave enough to say, "We can be better. We will be better. Starting now." Saturday morning began not with the sun, but with a screen. Maline's phone buzzed at 6:17 a.m. What? Then again. Then 10 times more in quick succession. She blinked against the blue light, her mind still foggy from the late night before. Emails. Notifications. Mentions. All flooding in like a tidal wave. Was the letter. The one she had written from her heart, raw and unfiltered. The one she had sent out after midnight thinking it would maybe be skimmed by a few hundred people. Instead, it had exploded. The subject line alone had been enough to stop people scrolling. "We forgot who we were," a letter from the owner of Royce Motors. By morning, it had been reposted over 3,000 times. Screenshotted on Facebook, trending on LinkedIn, shared in local forums and business groups. It wasn't just customers who were reading it, it was leaders, entrepreneurs, even rival dealerships. What caught people off guard was the honesty. "I built something with pride. But I let distance and growth blind me to what it had become. The fault isn't in my staff alone. It's in me. I stopped showing up. I started trusting spreadsheets more than people. And for that, I'm sorry. If you were treated poorly by my team, if you walked through our doors and felt less than, I want you to know, you were right to feel that way. And I was wrong to let it happen. But we're changing. Not through slogans. Not through marketing. But through humility, retraining, and a relentless focus on character over charm." She signed it simply. Maline Royce, owner. "P.S. Come back. Let us show you who we really are." The message was clear. Not a rebrand. A rebirth. By 9 a.m., the line outside Royce Motors stretched halfway down the block. People came not just to buy, but to see. Some came out of curiosity. Others came out of support. A few came simply to shake Maline's hand and say, "Thank you for saying what no one else does." Greg stood at the front door, dressed not in his usual slouchy button-up, but a proper navy jacket. He opened the door for an elderly veteran with a firm nod. Jessica offered coffee to guests, her smile no longer performative but warm, steady. Troy stood near the lot, answering questions like a man whose ego had been dismantled and reassembled into something stronger. By noon, the first major sale came through, a custom Cadillac Escalade to a couple who had walked out just last week after being ignored. "I read your letter," the wife said to Maline. "We decided to give you another chance. And we're glad we did." Maline didn't smile for the sale. She smiled for the second chance. That afternoon, news crews began showing up. Local outlets at first, Channel 5, Star Telegram reporters, but by early evening, a national business blogger had already published an article titled, "When a CEO owns her failure, the world listens." The story was no longer just about cars. It was about leadership, about character, about redemption. And then came the unexpected. A woman in her 30s approached Maline near the coffee station, her hand trembling slightly as she held her phone out. I worked here 3 years ago," she said, tears already gathering in the corners of her eyes. "I was let go after just 3 weeks. They said I wasn't upscale enough. I thought it was me. That something was wrong with me." Maline felt her throat tighten. The woman continued, "But I read your letter. And I realized, it wasn't me. It was them. Thank you. I'm not here to complain, I just wanted to say, thank you." Maline stepped forward and hugged her without a word. Because sometimes the wound isn't just financial. It's the erosion of worth, the quiet echo of "you're not enough" that people carry for years. And sometimes one public apology is enough to start healing that. By 6 p.m., Royce Motors had sold more cars in a single day than it had in the past 2 weeks combined. But again, it wasn't about the numbers. It was about the energy. Employees weren't rushing to close deals. They were working to build relationships. They weren't chasing commissions, they were chasing connection. As the day came to a close, Maline stood at the edge of the showroom and watched the team. They moved differently now. Not faster. Not louder. Just better. Then a quiet moment. Jessica walked over and held out a folded piece of paper. "I know we're not doing formal reviews right now," she said, "but I wanted to write something down." Maline opened the note. Read. "This isn't just a job anymore. It's a place I'm proud to stand in again." That night, long after the last customer left, Maline walked through the showroom in silence. She didn't turn on any lights. She let the moonlight filter in through the windows, painting the cars in silver. She placed a hand on the hood of a Jaguar, the same one she had walked past unseen on her first day undercover. But now she wasn't invisible. And neither was the truth. Monday started differently. No flood of emails. No line out the door. No headlines buzzing through her phone. Instead, it started with a call. Private number. Early. Persistent. Maline hesitated before answering, still sitting at her kitchen table, coffee half sipped, laptop open to a spreadsheet she hadn't looked at in over 20 minutes. She wasn't in the mood for solicitations, but something about the way the phone kept ringing, it wasn't noise. It was deliberate. She picked up. "Ms. Royce." The voice was smooth. Controlled. "Mel. Maybe late 50s. Maybe older. This is Daniel Rhodes. I'm the regional director for Titan Automotive Group. We own 78 dealerships across the country." Maline blinked. "Okay. Good morning?" Rhodes chuckled. "Straight to it. I like that. I won't waste your time. I read your letter. Saw the footage. The interviews. Impressive doesn't quite cover it." Maline leaned back in her chair. "I wasn't aiming for a feature story. Just trying to clean up my own mess. And that's exactly why you're getting this call," he said. "We've been looking for someone like you. Someone who doesn't just manage, but leads." There was a pause. Then he dropped it. "We want to offer you a seat on our national advisory board. You'd consult directly on dealer culture, ethics, training. Real change from the inside." Maline didn't respond immediately. Her mind was already racing. Titan Group was a giant, corporate, sprawling, powerful. The offer was flattering to say the least. But she didn't build Royce Motors for a resume bullet. She built it because no one gave her a seat at the table, so she built her own. "I'm flattered," she finally said. "But I'm not interested in being a figurehead." Rhodes was quick. "Neither are we. We're tired of window dressing leadership. We want substance. And frankly, what you did in 2 weeks is what most execs fail to do in 2 years." Maline stared out her window at the street below. Cars passed. People walked dogs. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed faintly. I need to think, she said. Of course, Rhodes replied. But know this, we're not just offering you a title. We're offering you reach. You could impact thousands of employees, millions of customers. Real scale. When the call ended, Maline didn't move. Not for a long time. She thought about everything. The employees who stayed. The ones who didn't. The people who walked in not expecting kindness and left with more than a car. She thought about her father's voice again, his raspy certainty echoing in her bones. Crush the problem so it never comes back. But this wasn't a problem to crush. It was an opportunity to expand. She walked into Royce Motors that morning with the decision still unmade. The showroom greeted her with a strange, calming quiet. Not empty. Just balanced. The energy no longer tense, but intentional. Troy was reviewing a customer's file with a trainee beside him, explaining each column with surprising patience. Jessica was adjusting display tags on the showroom floor, aligning them perfectly beneath each vehicle, something she never used to care about. Greg was sitting with a couple in his office, nodding attentively as they spoke. No phone. No scrolling. Just presence. Maline watched it all quietly from the doorway. The thing she had built, then rebuilt, was breathing again. But with breath came choices. At lunch, she called a staff meeting. Everyone gathered in a loose semicircle. No chairs. No podium. Just people standing shoulder to shoulder. I got a call this morning, she began. Eyes locked onto her. Titan Group. They want me to join their national advisory board. Culture reform. Training overhaul. Big stage. The room was dead quiet. A few eyes widened. Greg broke the silence. Are you leaving? No, she said. But I'm thinking. Jessica raised a hand, voice softer than usual. Would you still be here? Yes. But not every day. Some weeks I'd be traveling. Visiting other dealerships. Teaching. Watching. Learning. Troy nodded slowly. You earned that seat. You should take it. Maline smiled. Maybe. But it only works if this place keeps growing while I'm gone. Without disguises. Without ultimatums. Just good people doing the right thing. She turned to Greg. Could you hold it down if I stepped away? Greg stiffened. I can try. Not enough, she said. I need yes or no. He looked around the room. At Jessica. At Troy. At the others. Then back to Maline. Yes, he said. I won't let it slip again. She nodded. Good. Because we're about to become an example for the entire country. That night she called Rhodes back. I'm in, she said. Glad to hear it, he replied. We start next month. And Maline? Yes. Don't change too much. She smiled. I don't plan to. I finally remembered who I am. After the call, Maline stood at the edge of the lot as the sun set behind rows of Cadillacs and Jaguars. She felt the breeze on her face, soft and warm. Royce Motors had become more than a business. It was a statement. And soon it would be a beacon. Not because it sold luxury, but because it had rediscovered its soul. 2 weeks later, the air inside Royce Motors held a different weight. Not heavy, not stale, but charged. Maline wasn't there. For the first time in years, she had entrusted the showroom to others, completely. She wasn't in the back office. She wasn't lurking nearby in disguise. She was 3 states away, seated in a Titan Group conference room in Denver, walking executives through a case study that used to be her failure but had become her flagship. She stood before a wall of data, before and after charts, customer testimonials, exit interviews, review ratings, and told the story of what happened when a leader stopped managing from the top floor and started walking the ground level. They listened. She spoke. And somewhere deep down, a sliver of doubt gnawed quietly. Did I leave too soon? Will they backslide? Are they really ready? Back in Fort Worth, the first test had arrived. It walked in wearing a sharp suit, a $9,000 wristwatch, and a sneer that could curdle cream. Julian Pierce. The kind of customer everyone in the business world knew to smile for, flatter endlessly, and pray he didn't leave a 1-star review just for fun. He was a tech investor, Instagram famous, and notorious for buying cars not to drive, but to post about. He had money. He had ego. And he had walked into Royce Motors like he owned it. Let's move this along, he barked the moment he stepped inside. I've got a meeting in 30 minutes and I want something German and aggressive. Preferably in black. Troy approached with a confident smile. Of course, sir. Let's take a look at a few models that might fit your style. I don't want to be pitched, Julian snapped. I want options. And I don't want to waste time with base trims. Show me something worthy of my name. Jessica, nearby, exchanged a glance with Troy. It was the kind of moment that used to trigger every bad instinct. The desire to flatter, to overpromise, to ignore red flags if it meant a big commission. But not today. Troy held his ground. We'll gladly show you our premium line, Mr. Pierce. But before we do, I want to let you know, our dealership doesn't operate like most others. We don't rush. We don't fake. And we definitely don't bend over backwards for disrespect. Julian froze, clearly stunned. Jessica stepped in. We treat everyone with dignity here, customers and staff. So if that doesn't work for you, we're happy to refer you elsewhere. For a split second, the room held its breath. Then Julian let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. You think I need you? I could buy this whole place before lunch. Troy shrugged. Maybe. But you still wouldn't be welcome back without respect. Julian stormed out 10 minutes later. No purchase, no Instagram post, no angry tirade on social media. Instead, he posted something unexpected. Walked into a dealership expecting bootlickers. Walked out with a lesson in humility. Royce Motors has balls. I respect it. The post went viral. Not because of the insult, but because of the honesty. Hundreds of comments flooded in. Finally, a dealership with a spine. More businesses need to take a page from Royce Motors. Respect goes both ways. Love this. Back in Denver, Maline saw the post just before boarding her flight home. She stared at it stunned. Then she smiled, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. They had passed the test. Not because they made a sale, but because they didn't compromise who they were for one. By the time she returned the next day, the team was already moving like a well-oiled machine. The code of conduct hadn't just become a poster, it had become a promise. Embedded. Live. She gathered the team in the same circle they'd stood in weeks ago and asked one question. Why did you stand up to him? Troy looked at her, more confident than she had ever seen him. Because we finally understood something, he said. We don't sell cars. He paused. We sell trust. Jessica nodded. And once you break that, the sale means nothing. Greg stepped forward. We used to think this job was about money. Turns out it's about meaning. Maline didn't speak for a moment. Then she smiled. You've become everything I hoped this place could be. And more. She looked around the room at each face. Some once arrogant, some once lazy, now shining with a different kind of pride. Quiet. Rooted. Let's make this our new floor, she said. Not the ceiling. And with that, Royce Motors entered its new era. Not built on horsepower or price tags but on something far more valuable. Honor. Maline had always believed in pressure. Not as punishment but as proof. People show you who they are when no one's watching. Or better yet, when they think no one's watching. So she decided to watch again. Not in disguise this time, not hidden behind a pair of sunglasses or beneath an old t-shirt. This time she would watch through someone else's eyes. Enter, the secret shopper. Her name was Kiera. 22, fresh out of college, journalism major, barista side job, and a passion for human psychology. Maline met her at a small networking event hosted by the Fort Worth Women in Business Group. Kiera had casually mentioned she wanted to write a piece about workplace culture. Maline had smiled and said, how about a front row seat? No cameras. No wire. Just Kiera, a notepad and her sharp instincts. Come in as a customer, Maline told her. Don't dress flashy. Don't fake anything. Just be you. Let's see how they do. Kiera was thrilled. On a quiet Tuesday morning, she walked through the gleaming glass doors of Royce Motors, wearing black jeans, a plain gray tee and sneakers so scuffed they had probably run through half the state. Her hair was tied back into a messy ponytail, and her bag slung over her shoulder looked more like a gym tote than a purse. Perfect. Jessica was the first to notice her. No hesitation. Hi there. Welcome to Royce Motors, she said warmly, walking over. Is there something I can help you find today? Kiera blinked. Maybe. Just browsing. Honestly, I'm not sure I can afford anything here. Jessica chuckled, but not condescendingly. That's totally okay. We're here for questions too, not just keys and contracts. Want to walk the floor with me? 10 minutes in, Jessica had shown her 3 different models, patiently explaining each one without ever making Kiera feel pressured or small. At one point, Kiera hesitated before asking a question. Something about fuel efficiency and hybrid performance. Jessica leaned in gently. There are no dumb questions. If we don't help people understand what they're buying, then we're not doing our job. Kiera scribbled that down in her notepad that night. Troy was next. She bumped into him, accidentally, by the coffee machine. He smiled, offered her a fresh cup, and asked her what kind of driving she did most, city or highway. It wasn't a pitch. It was curiosity. Human. Honest. Greg, watching from a distance, nodded as she passed by. He didn't hover. He didn't dominate the conversation. He gave space. Respect. Kiara spent an hour on the lot. Then she left. She emailed Maline that night. This place doesn't just talk culture, it breathes it. Jessica made me feel like I belonged before she even asked what I was looking for. Troy didn't upsell. He asked, Greg. Quiet but respectful. Not once did I feel like a dollar sign. The old Royce Motors may have been about cars. But the new one? It's about people. Maline read the email twice. Then a third time. And finally, she let herself feel something she hadn't fully allowed before. The kind that doesn't come from growth charts or quarterly margins. The kind that only comes when something you love, something you nearly lost, finds its way back home. She printed out Kiara's email and pinned it to the back wall of the showroom the next morning. Not where customers could see it, where the team could. Where it would remind them every day that even when the world wasn't watching, they still were. Greg walked by and read the email, nodded softly to himself. Jessica stared at it for a long time, hands clasped behind her back. Troy smiled faintly, the kind of smile that says we've come far. And then a new customer walked through the door. A single mother, 2 kids clinging to her sides, looking overwhelmed before she even reached the reception desk. Jessica stepped forward first. Hi there, she said. Let's make this easy. Because now at Royce Motors that's what they did. They made people feel seen. The award arrived in a simple white envelope, dropped off by a courier who had no idea he was delivering something that would change everything, again. It was late afternoon on a Thursday. The showroom was calm, golden light pouring in through the high windows. Maline had just finished a follow-up meeting with a retired schoolteacher who'd bought her first new car in decades. She loved the backup camera but loved the respect even more. Thank you for treating me like I mattered, the woman had said, her voice trembling just a little. Most places look through people like me. That was still ringing in Maline's ears when Jessica handed her the envelope. No return address, she said. Just your name. Maline opened it slowly, sliding out a thick, cream-colored letterhead with a gold seal at the top. Her eyes narrowed as she read the first few lines, then widened. Greg walked by and paused. Something wrong? She shook her head. No. Something very right. The letter was from the National Independent Auto Dealers Association. A group Maline had brushed elbows with over the years, but never much engaged. Too much bureaucracy, too much lip service. But this was different. Royce Motors had been selected for the 2025 Customer Integrity Excellence Award. It wasn't just about sales numbers or brand recognition. It was awarded to dealerships that had demonstrated transformative cultural shifts in the face of ethical crisis, and emerged stronger. There were 5 finalists. But Royce had won. Unanimously. The panel had read her letter. They'd seen the viral clips. But what sealed the decision, they wrote, was a customer's anonymous nomination that included the line, I didn't just buy a car at Royce Motors. I bought back my dignity. Maline sat in her office, still just a desk by the front window, still open to the room, and let the silence stretch for a moment. Then she stood up, walked to the center of the showroom, and rang the small brass bell that used to only be reserved for closed sales. Everyone looked up. Jessica blinked. Troy straightened. Greg stepped away from his desk. Maline held up the letter. We just won an award, she said, keeping her voice level. Sales? Greg guessed. No, she said. Something better. Character. She read the letter aloud. The room was still. Then Jessica whispered, we weren't even trying to win anything. That's why we did, Maline said. And for the first time since she tore them apart weeks ago, she clapped. Slow. Deliberate. Proud. They joined in, tentatively at first, then stronger. Louder. Not for the applause but for what it meant. Not one of them had expected to be proud to work here again. But they were. A week later, at the NIATA Awards banquet in Chicago, Maline took the stage in front of 600 business leaders and executives. Lights flashing, cameras rolling, polite clapping waiting for her speech. But she didn't speak about numbers. She didn't speak about growth. She told them about the break room. She told them about a woman who disguised herself to hear the truth, and about the ugliness that waited there. She told them about the choice that followed, clean house or change hearts. And then she ended with this. Culture is not a slogan. It's not a mission statement framed on a wall. Culture is how people behave when they think they won't be held accountable. If you want to know your culture, stop asking your managers. Start watching your janitors. Start listening to your receptionists. Start following the whispers. I built a dealership. Then I tore it down. Now I've built something better. Not just a business. A place where people matter more than profit. And I challenge every one of you here, go undercover in your own empire. See what you find. Then do what needs to be done. Even if it hurts. She stepped down to a standing ovation. Not because she gave the perfect speech, but because, for the first time, someone in their world had said what everyone else was too proud to admit. We lost our way. We can find it again. Spring melted into summer, and the days at Royce Motors took on a rhythm Maline never dared to imagine in those early weeks of chaos. Not the robotic repetition of a corporation, but the steady heartbeat of a place with purpose. Sales held strong. Reviews surged. Turnover dropped to nearly zero. But more importantly, so did the size. The frowns. The tension behind smiles that used to be faked. Now they weren't putting on a show, they were living a standard. And for Maline, something even bigger was beginning to take shape. It started with one email. Subject line, your story changed our store. Then another. We implemented your code of conduct. Morale's never been higher. And then a third. Would you speak at our dealer retreat? By midsummer, Maline had over 40 invitations to speak, mentor, consult. From across the country. From companies large and small. Not because they wanted a motivational guru. But because they had seen what she did, and needed to believe they could do it too. And suddenly Royce Motors wasn't just a dealership anymore. It was a blueprint. Maline never intended to become a symbol. She didn't want to be that CEO from the viral video. She was still most comfortable walking the lot, checking tire shine, wiping smudges off windshields with her bare hands. But every time she looked at her inbox, at the letters and thank you cards now pinned to her office wall, she felt something growing that she hadn't expected. Legacy. Not the kind you leave behind. The kind you build while you're still here. One day in late August, a young girl about 10 years old walked into the showroom with her father. She wore a pink baseball cap and had a journal clutched tight to her chest. While her dad spoke to a salesperson, the girl wandered toward Maline's desk, eyes wide. Are you the lady from the video? She asked. Maline looked up, amused. Depends which video. The one where you yelled at everybody and then made everything better. Maline laughed softly. I suppose that's me. The girl smiled, then held out the notebook. I wrote about you for school. Our teacher said to pick someone who's brave. Maline's heart paused. She took the notebook gently and flipped to the marked page. In big, uneven handwriting were the words. Maline Royce didn't fight with fists. She fought with truth. Underneath was a crayon drawing of the showroom with cars and people smiling. The girl had drawn Maline standing in the middle, hands on her hips, cape fluttering in the wind. Maline blinked hard, throat tight. What's your name? She asked. Lila, the girl said. Well, Lila, Maline said, that may be the best award I've ever gotten. That night, after the lights were dimmed and the keys locked away, Maline sat alone at her desk and looked out across the quiet floor. The silence wasn't empty. It was full. Of memories. Of mistakes. Of redemption. She thought about the first time she'd walked in wearing those old jeans and that cheap t-shirt. About the way they'd talked about her like she was nothing. About the laughter behind her back. About the sting of it. And then about what had grown from that sting. Change. Real change. The kind that scars your ego but heals your soul. She remembered her father's words again. Words that had followed her through every chapter of this journey. When you see a problem, you can either complain about it, or you crush it so it never comes back. She smiled to herself. But then she thought, maybe crushing it isn't the only way. Maybe the better way is to confront it, own it, learn from it, and build something better over the broken pieces. Not every wound needs a war. Some just need the truth. And the courage to live by it. In a world full of noise, character speaks the loudest when no one's watching. Maline Royce reminded us that leadership isn't about titles. It's about truth. And sometimes, the most powerful change begins with a quiet decision to do better. As Maline said, culture isn't a mission statement. It's who you are when nobody's keeping score. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe for more powerful real-life inspired stories. Comment below with what part hit you the hardest. And share this with someone who believes in second chances.